Story 1. I had ignored the red flags for years. I was the primary breadwinner. He would flip items but used my money and spent any earnings on himself. I was so busy trying to take care of everything that I had not realized how bad things had truly become. He was emotionally and financially abusive, but 3.5 years in, he became physically abusive. I was home alone, avoiding the world because I had a black eye. I was so ashamed that my life had devolved into pure fear and chaos. A mutual friend stopped by, and although I had been hiding something, he told me it was safe to open the door. He did not say anything about the black eye and just started chatting about life in general. He suddenly got serious and said, "You work so hard and have nothing to show for it. It does not have to be this way. Imagine how much money you would have if it was just you. The day you are ready to leave, let me know and I will get you out of here safely." In that moment, I knew I was not as alone as I thought. It still took me another month to get my courage up to leave. The breaking point was another black eye, broken blood vessels in my eyes, and bruises around my neck. My partner, now my ex, calmly looked at me broken, crying, bruised, and said in a calm and cold voice, "I could kill you and bury you in the backyard and no one would ever miss you." I waited until he fell asleep. I quietly crawled into the bedroom looking for my spare pair of glasses since my partner would always take them when he thought I might leave. I can only see 12 inches in front of me without glasses. It was an effective way for him to control my ability to leave. I found an old cell phone with no service but new emergency calls would go through. I grabbed the keys to my 20-year-old Expedition, which I never drove because it was old and had engine troubles. My ex had disabled the speedometer as another way to keep me captive. I knew once I started the truck there was no going back. I sat in the driver's seat crying and praying for strength to turn the key. I drove off and did not look back. I drove to a convenience store a few miles down the street and called emergency services. I requested an officer to help me get to the local domestic violence shelter. Of course, my ex tracked me down at the shelter. My advocate arranged a bed for me in a shelter out of state. I sold my truck for $400 to a junk car buyer. I did not have the title, but the buyer knew I was in a shelter and let it slide. I took a bus and prayed that I had escaped for good. It has been 4 years this month since I left. My life is so much better now. I do not cry every day anymore. I do not have to try and cover up bruises with makeup anymore. I am free and happy. I still have rough days, but they are infinitely better than my best days with him. I never reached out to the friend that encouraged me to leave. If Harold happens to see this, thank you for caring and reminding me I had worth. Anyone who is experiencing domestic violence in the United States, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you are not from the United States, online resources for abusive relationships are available worldwide. Story 2. I was a registered nurse during the coronavirus pandemic. Between the craziness of the pandemic and the departure of staff shortly after, causing us to be severely short-staffed so that I was doing the work of 2 or 3 nurses each shift and denied vacation for almost a year, I became severely burned out and experienced intrusive thoughts about self-harm. Fortunately, I recognized this and left. Quit my job, got a job teaching English in Japan, sold most of my belongings, and left. Honestly, it was one of the best things I have ever done for myself. Being away from home and nursing gave me the space I needed to rebuild my mental health. I am back in Canada now and working as a nurse in a different location. I am doing much better overall, but I am also now in therapy to address all the challenges since 2020. Story 3. I was sitting in a room with my ex, and he was talking about buying Magic, the gathering cards with our rent money. That night, I put an ad on Facebook saying I was giving away everything from my house. People came and took everything, including my fence. The next day, I got in my car and drove off. I was homeless for a while and ended up living in a town about an hour away, where I got a room in an old house and a job doing delivery. I met my now husband later that month while he was homeless too. On our first date, he was so determined that he was going to be successful one day that I said, "Let's build a life together." We got married in 2015 and are doing better than ever. He recently earned his doctorate, and I run my own business. I believe in cutting ties and starting over when the place you're at has nothing for you. Story 4. I told him I was sick, terrified I was going to die before I knew what was wrong with me, and I needed his help. He told me to get my emotional needs filled by someone else. So I did. I filed for divorce knowing it might cost me my house, my dog, my car, and my friends. He got the car, we sold the house, I got the dog, and I am on good terms with most of the friend group. I also got true love. I am with an amazing man who loves me and helped me get back to health. It was a long road, which I am still on, but he has been by my side the entire way. Absolutely worth the car and the house 1,000 times over. I am happier than I have ever been in my entire life. 10 out of 10 would do again. Story 5. His mother told me herself to leave. She loves her son, but she said she is a woman first and she will not tolerate watching what was happening continue. She still checks in on me to this day. Story 6. I was living in my home state and had no local friends, a terrible job, and the lease on my apartment was ending. I was lost, hopeless, and alone. I made the spontaneous choice to move out of state and start fresh. I now live in my new home, met my husband, and am working at a job I love that pays me better than any job I had before. Story 7. I had a boyfriend when I was 18 to 22 who was very mentally abusive. I felt like I couldn't leave, like I wouldn't survive. He took the money I earned as rent. The only nice thing he did was buy me a car, but he made sure I knew it was his if we ended. One night he said to me, "You'd be nothing without me." And suddenly it just clicked. I left a few hours later. He took my keys, so I didn't have access to anything. I walked 2 hours to my family's house. I am 28 now, have an amazing boyfriend, a steady job, and a 1-year-old. Life is good. Story 8. I am not at that point yet, but I would be lying if I said I had not considered it recently. A few of the posts here are quite inspirational. Story 9. My breaking point was when my ex-husband found his new girlfriend and told me to get out of our home. I said okay. I did not fight or anything. I cried, of course, but did not yell. I packed my things that day. Luckily, my family bought me a one-way ticket back home, and I stayed with my grandmother for a while. I got a job for the peak Christmas season, which helped me get back on track. Then I started to heavily drink and use drugs. After one of my darkest days on drugs, I met a man. He seemed nice and funny. I talked to him and he became my boyfriend. He helped me get clean. We moved in together. Today, I am a data analyst and 5 years sober. I have a son and a loving husband who truly cares for me. I left everything I thought was important behind with my first husband. Now that I have my family, I cannot imagine my life with that first man. I am happy now. Story 10. My breaking point was realizing I did not belong in the place I was any longer, so I left. Life has been good since then, so it was probably a good choice. Story 11. My life was in shambles. My wife's affair had shattered our family, and our children were collateral damage in our endless arguments. My job was also a source of immense stress, offering none of the advantages that typically come with working in a family business. I felt worthless, my self-respect was non-existent, and my mind was so damaged thanks to relentless gaslighting. I hit rock bottom, a desperate place where I found myself on my knees, contemplating suicide. My pistol, hidden in the closet, seemed to beckon me, promising a quick end to my pain. But as I stood up, a harsh truth hit me. My wife, for all her faults, was also a poor mother to our children. That realization gave me the strength to turn away from the closet and step back from the edge. The thought of suicide is a heavy, chilling conviction that those left behind might be better off without you. For me, it was my children who saved me, who gave me a reason to keep fighting. To this day, it makes me nauseous looking back on this time of my life. I decided to take control of my life and enrolled in a local university. About halfway through my first semester, my wife left me for another man. I stayed strong, finished what I started, and moved out of our home, leaving her to move her new partner in. I paid the bills and lived at home with my parents while we sorted out our difficult divorce. I was eventually able to evict them both, as neither could hold a job or take care of the yard. I gave her a paid-off vehicle and all of our belongings, but I leveraged joint custody. I even let it slide when they withdrew thousands from my savings. As my senior year approached, I had moved back into that home and reclaimed my independence. I signed the divorce papers in the morning and headed straight to class to finish my finals. I graduated, making the dean's and president's lists, and earned a Bachelor of Arts in Business and Accounting. I am now studying for my certified public accountant license. A month after our divorce was finalized, she fled to another city with another man. I filed for full custody and removed child support from our orders. I was granted the motion since she defaulted. Now, I have my children exclusively, able to make decisions, get them to school on time, and provide a stable, enjoyable environment. Now was the time to finally cut ties with my family business and move to another town with my new wife. We capitalized on the housing market dynamics and moved up the ladder. My relationship with my siblings and father has improved tremendously. I even make more money now with less stress, and I am not even a vice president of anything. I gave up luxurious vehicles and other items that made it tough to separate from. But those items were not enough for me to endure this pain anymore. Hitting that bottom was real, but I remind myself that things happen for a reason. Even when you think it is hell, good things are waiting for you in the future. We do not always know what is best for ourselves. I am happily married to the woman of my dreams, share a home with our blended family, and with her support, we have accomplished so much in so little time. I was even able to add one more to the family. My children choose not to see their mother, and I will not pressure or hinder that relationship. I have given them the tools to make good decisions based on healthy relationships, even though they endured a very stressful one early on. I let them navigate their own path and I support them. It is the best decision I could have ever made. The realization of taking your own life was the lowest I have ever been. I encourage anyone at that all-time low to reconsider the ones who love you unconditionally. They would be shattered at the thought of losing you. Stay positive and love your life. Story 12. I tried so hard for 5 years and we really did have a good time, but he ignored me. He couldn't handle my career and working mostly with men. We went on a family trip that my mother paid for, and he raised his voice at me in front of my family, whom he had never met. He did not want to talk about any real-life matters. I woke up the second day after we got home feeling sick to my stomach, knowing that if I did not leave, I would be deeply depressed for the rest of my life. Fast forward to now, and I get to travel for work and earn a significant amount of money. I will never let a man dictate my paycheck again. Story 13. I left my hometown as soon as I graduated from high school. I vowed to spend as little time there as possible. I did not like the place or the people. The people made it clear they did not like me. I have been living the dream ever since. Story 14. I left my abusive partner after he punched me in the face. I lost my baby and could not take any more. I should never have reached that point, and I regret not leaving sooner every day. Now I am happily married, moved to a new country at 42 years old, have a fantastic job, and have never looked back. Also, I am 8 months pregnant. It is never too late. Story 15. He was planning to kill me. Nothing I have or no one I knew is worth my life. I still spend a lot of time in bed trying not to vomit. But at least I am free. I have not been homeless in months, and I just got promoted at work. It is worth walking away. My life is mine. I deserve it, and I deserve to have as good a life as I can make. Story 16. Don't want to talk about what happened, but completely removed myself from the social scene. Had to end friendships over a decade old and felt completely isolated in a city where I had grown up. Eventually, I moved away, found my current partner, had to completely change my career path, and discovered hobbies I never had the chance to explore before. I worked a lot on my mental health and rebuilt a couple of the friendships that were valuable to me on healthier terms. I sincerely believe breaking points are a chance to rebuild, often in a good way. Always prioritize your well-being and financial stability over everything. Leave behind anything that threatens them. Story 17. There actually was not even a breaking point for me. I was with someone for 7 years through my teens and early 20s, and I was miserable, but I did not know I was miserable. Then I slowly started to notice things. And one day when I was 22, I thought, my whole life is going to be like this if I do not make a change. So the next day I went to my mom's, told her I was leaving, and I was going to move into my grandparents' house 5 hours away in a new state. The day after that I woke up, told him I was leaving to create a better life for myself, and that is what I did. I packed everything in garbage bags, quit the 4 dead-end jobs I had, and left everything I ever knew. I never looked back. The day I got to my grandparents', they took me to the local community college where I immediately signed up for classes. I ended up meeting the best friends of my life there, lost a lot of weight, found a job I loved through school, and then transferred to a university where I earned my bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I am now married to the very best and most supportive person anyone could ever ask for. I have a dog, the best job of anyone I have ever known that takes me to amazing places, and I meet incredible people. I have traveled the world, but most of all, I created a life of peace filled with success, gratitude, and happiness. I am living a life I dreamed of and never thought I could have, and it feels so good. I am grateful for every day, and if I had to go through it all again to get where I am today, I would do it in a heartbeat. Story 18. I asked his daughter to do her Sunday chores. She said she had, and I replied that she had not, as there were no vacuum lines and there was still dirt on the kitchen floor from that morning. She got in my face screaming, and I looked at him relaxing on the couch and asked, "Really?" He said he keeps track of her allowance. I looked her in the face and said, "I'm done with you." I turned and looked at him and said, "I'm done with you too." 11.5 years together. He was kind and paid for my apartment for the first year, so I didn't have to move back in with my mom. I was 43 then. Things aren't great, but they are a lot better than they were. I'm 46 now, single and overweight, but I don't have the depression or anxiety I did back then. Story 19. Husband of over a decade was cheating on me with multiple people. He also subjected me to years of emotional, financial, and physical abuse. I traveled abroad for medical treatment, and while I was away, he married his girlfriend in another state while we were still married. The next 5 years were hellish as he dragged out the divorce. I filed. He was very upset that I filed and couldn't stop me. He spread the most egregious lies about me to his family and all of our mutual friends both in person and online. He went out of his way to defame me and break me. Think of the most horrific things you could be accused of doing. He claimed I did them. I am happy to say I am 10 years clear of him and happily divorced. It took a number of years to heal and get past it all, but I would absolutely make the same decision again about leaving and filing for divorce despite the difficult process I had to endure to gain my freedom. I am 100% happier now and have my old self-confidence back. My peace, both day-to-day and inner, is priceless and was worth fighting for. I wouldn't swap my life now for anything. Story 20. I was directing a play and had a meeting with the producer. She began criticizing me and saying that what we had agreed upon was not going to work because she did not like it. It was not a logistics issue. She just literally did not like it and threatened to fire me if I went through with it. She had been undermining me the entire time, and I was sick of her, so I said forget it and walked out. She ended up begging me to come back because the cast loved me and disliked her, so I agreed to return as her assistant director on the condition that she paid me significantly more money and we would never have to directly interact. I am not sure why she agreed to that, but she did. The week after the show closed, I moved 500 miles away and started going to film school. That was 10 years ago, and I only just stepped foot back in a theater for the first time about a month ago. I work in film now, have started producing but no longer direct, and I live 1,500 miles from that difficult woman. I am so much happier. Story 21. Walked away from a 20-year relationship that had turned abusive with my high school sweetheart. I am 3 years out of it. It took therapy, some luck, a couple of supportive and encouraging friends, and a lot of intentionality with my decisions and emotions. After 2 years of healing, I met the love of my life, and I married him 2 weeks ago. When my ex and I split, I took the advice I gave others and did not let him steal any more of my life by seeking revenge, wallowing excessively, or hating all men. I focused on healing and discovering who I wanted to be now. Story 22. I left my then husband. I had lived in the same place forever, So I threw a dart at a map and moved to a place I had never been and where I did not know anyone. I rented an apartment site unseen. I had no safety net, so I had to make it work. 11 years later, I am still in that same apartment and life is great. Story 23. His dad got a little too forward. Last straw. To be honest, I have not financially or socially recovered 6 years later. I am alive and not in a bad relationship, but our society is set up for married couples. It is very hard, but at least I am not with an abusive alcoholic. Story 24. I moved out of state at 18 after growing up in a severely dysfunctional household, witnessing physical, mental, and emotional abuse consistently throughout my childhood with parents who were using hard drugs. I started a new life in a new state, and it was the best decision I ever made. Story 25. Professionally fine but socially delayed. Pretty much started over in 2018. I wish I had started over in 2013. Those last 5 years leading into the reset may as well have been 15 years. Edit. Socially as in life goals and such. Luckily, I am pretty youthful and look 10 to 12 years younger, but I should be further along in that game of life. Story 26. Without going into too many details, I hated my life and wanted a fresh start. I was depressed, and all my friends disappointed me. I packed up and moved across the country to a state I had never visited before and did not know a single person there. Now I live not too far from where I left, but I am much happier overall. Story 27. I am in the middle of it right now. My partner would not stop yelling at me every single day. I lost my job because the company I was working for went insolvent. More yelling followed. I was losing my hair from stress, so I walked out. I am temporarily staying in a shed on a friend's farm. I have applied to go to medical school. My ex is buying me out of our apartment. I am 40 years old. I have no idea if I made the right choice, but I could not live like that anymore. I never want to be yelled at by a loved one again. Story 28. I was forced to go back, then knocked down by the people who made me go back, and my life was destroyed by them. Story 29. Had an alcoholic father and an unstable mother who both wanted me to overlook decades of neglect and abuse to take care of them in their elderly years. Sold and gave away nearly everything and moved across the country. Could not have made a better decision. Story 30. My ex never brought my son, 3.5 years old, home after Thanksgiving 2023. I found out my relatives were still keeping my son every week. My grandmother and aunt both lived in my neighborhood, just one street over. My attorney is disbarred. I do not have parents. I worked at Walmart where they all shopped frequently in our small town. I went to the police and the courthouse but was turned away from every local attorney's office. I have never been on drugs, but I never got my footing right with finances or family. My son was kidnapped for the second time. My relatives are extremely religious. My ex and his family are narcissistic. I was ready to take my own life. I got married and moved to a different state. I have a new baby son. We own a house, have our own cars, 7 acres, a puppy, and a lush garden and orchard. I only see pictures of my eldest son, now 5 years old, through my aunt's Facebook timeline. My relatives refused to respond to my many requests for pictures. My ex held me hostage for 2 years. He called me his slave and the perfect rape victim. The PTSD feels like my life flashes before my eyes all the time. I miss my beautiful child every day. My baby, and I look at his photos and sing songs about him. There was no winning my son. His father is deranged with an arsenal of enablers. I started over from scratch. My children will know me as a survivor who smiles. Story 31. Long story short, my mother lied to me and my stepfather about who my father was. She basically committed parental fraud. It was traumatizing for many reasons, but the worst was knowing I grew up with an abusive father instead of my actual father who was simply absent. We had a huge fight that involved her becoming physical, so I ran away and stayed with friends before living with my dad and now my grandparents. I also experienced 3 other major negative life events within about 3 months. I was completely shattered, suicidal, admitted to a psychiatric ward, and said things to my family I am not proud of. That was 2 years ago, and things are going decently well now. I am in therapy, have made many new friends, and have a wonderful cat I adore. I still do not talk to my immediate family. Sometimes I think about how different my life could have been if I had known my actual father from the start. Running away without a plan was not the brightest idea, but it was one I needed to make and do not regret. Things could be better, but it is hard to complain with a solid friend group and a cat purring beside me. Story 32. I got into a horrible accident when I was 19. A tire popped and the car flipped 3 to 4 times into a ditch. I ended up pinned under a camper. Miraculously, I had a few scrapes and bruises but was otherwise fine. They had a body bag ready for me since I lost consciousness for a while. I lost everything. I was on a trip at the time, so my phone, laptop, and other belongings were all gone. The car was totaled too. I called my mom using the first responder's phone. There was no answer. I called my stepdad, who just said I would figure out my way to where I was going. He wanted to know I didn't have my phone but that I was okay and would be back on the day I planned. I was obviously very out of it and assumed my friend would drive the few hours to come get me. Well, he and my mom came and got me, and my stepdad proceeded to yell at me about how I want to be an adult but expect to be treated like a child. I had been financially independent and in college and working full-time since I was 18. I was not a troublemaker, did not use drugs, and was a stereotypically good kid. He was upset just because he came to get me, which I not only did not ask him to do but also did not need him to do. This is, believe it or not, one of the less terrible things he said over the years. Long story short, I moved halfway across the country 2 months later. I still speak to him maybe twice a year. He has raised me since I was 4 and can't even remember my birthday. Story 33. I was living with my then-girlfriend and her son. One day, I came home and found her hiding a man in the closet. We tried to make things work, which was a poor decision, and we inevitably ended our lease early. I moved back in with my parents. I was working a dead-end job with my ex, and when I went out with friends to try to get my mind off things, they would sometimes invite my ex because they were friends as well. I couldn't escape her. I went crazy, mad even. When looking for apartments one day, my sister texted me asking if I would move to Denver with her because she had just accepted a job offer there. I told her I would absolutely love to. I took a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment and condensed it into what would fit into my Chevy Malibu. The rest I donated, gifted, or threw away. I moved to Denver a year and a half ago. I have since dated again. I am still working difficult jobs, but I am starting school in August at the prime age of 29. Life is not perfect, but I am in a much better place than I was not even 2 years ago, and I am working on becoming a better version of myself. It is never too late to turn things around. Story 34. I was 15 and left with nothing but what could fit in my school bag. After being strangled to the point of blacking out, among other abuse leading up to this event, I warned my father that if he touched me again, I would go to the police. He instead attacked my cat to hurt me. That was the breaking point for me. Life was very hard for the first 7 years. Some days I am surprised I made it. I am 32 now, married with a child and another on the way. Life is good. I am very cautious with people now. If someone betrays me, I will go no contact without any argument or confrontation. All I want is peace in my life. I have never seen or spoken to my father since. I reconnected with my brother 2 years ago, which has been nice. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Would I wish it on anyone else? God, no. Story 35. Divorce. I hated all our belongings. They were broken. Instead of buying new items, he wanted to fix everything but never actually did. So I left it all behind and bought everything new. Story 36. I was in a job I did not like with a boss who was frankly unpleasant. How unpleasant? Among other things, I had to apologize to auditors for the way he treated them just for doing their job, auditing our department. He bullied his employees but was a submissive sycophant to his own superiors. The final straw was vacations. He took a 4-week vacation and my coworker in the same department took a 4-week vacation, but I was not allowed to take a 4-week vacation even though I had the leave. They said, "We can't do without you that long." When I asked why they could take a 4-week vacation but I could not, I was told, "We're married and have kids, but you don't. You're single, so you don't need a 4-week vacation." I found another job, gave 2 weeks notice and left. So they went from losing me for 4 weeks to losing me for good. My new job was teaching English as a foreign language in China. I was there for 20 years. Life was great. I met a girl, bought an apartment, had kids, and enjoyed my life. Story 37. Left a 10-year relationship with a very lazy, angry man. It took 3 years of constant rejection from other men, being laid off from work, losing major friend groups, and being alone for me to finally put myself first. I sold everything, quit my job, and moved to Spain with my 3 cats. I will try my hardest for a better life here now. Story 38. One of my best friends committed suicide a week and a half before I started my new job closer to my boyfriend. I started the job anyway since I knew that if I stopped moving for too long, I wouldn't get up again. I hated the job. My boyfriend turned nasty as soon as I moved and broke up with me a couple of months ago. I saw my friend for the first time in 6 months and learned that he was cremated the same day I started the job. I quit and moved to a new city. I'm doing okay. I am surrounded by my family and his. His daughter calls me auntie, and his wife and I are close. I didn't realize that I had a breaking point that would make me completely walk away from my life, but I guess everyone does. Since I'm not burnt out and constantly exhausted, I have time to sit with my feelings a lot. It's nice and very hard. My heart goes out to all who have started over. This is hard. But if I can't have my friend back, at least I can live a life that I actually want. I would give it all for one more night of his honest wisdom, though. Story 39. I moved to a different city. Except for one relative, I have no active safety net like I had in my hometown. This was the best move I ever made. I needed to create my own life and not live in the predetermined place where I grew up, surrounded by the same family and accent. I needed endless possibilities and motivation to forge my own path. The result was long-lasting happiness, and everything worked out. I left the largest city in the world to move to a smaller city. Story 40. I had 2 moments. One was when I left my hometown. I could not stand the gossip and hypocrisy. It felt like Big Brother was watching. It took 3 years of odd jobs to reach the national capital. The second moment was when my ex forced me to babysit her sisters. I broke up with her and went heavily into debt to get out of there. Now I live with my stepbrother and his boyfriend. Story 41. I have done it twice. I just got fed up and knew if I was going to change something, it would be me who changed it. Each time I built back better. Story 42. I had just graduated school in a town that did not have much industry related to my educational background. The lease was up on my apartment, and all the friends I made in school were moving away. The only options I had were to either go back to my hometown and stay in a toxic friend group or move to the other side of the country. I chose the latter, and I have been here for almost 20 years. I have 0 regrets. I made healthy friendships, got a job in my field, and settled down with my current partner. The toxic friends I had in my hometown stayed there, and from what I hear, have not been living good lives. If you have the opportunity to start somewhere new with a clean slate, take it. Story 43. Had a high-paying job with a famous entertainment company and absolutely hated the culture and the management, or lack thereof. Quit. My wife and I drove back across the country to Canada. We lived with her parents for 6 months. Both of us started our own businesses, got clients, rented a place, had a child, and made more than ever before in a corporate job. I finally saw the system and was very proud. It felt like I was taking a step back. But sometimes you have to go backward in order to move forward. Story 44. I had an existential crisis 20 years ago when I shared a buried, painful secret with my family. I hit a breaking point with someone who tormented me at a family event. I did not care anymore if I shattered the mythology of my family. I exposed my abuser, sold everything I owned, quit my job and moved abroad. 1 large duffel bag and a one-way ticket to Prague. I spent 4 years overseas. It was the best decision of my life. My life now is really good. I have a great job, own a home, and live a peaceful life. Story 45. I realized that if I kept drinking, I was going to actually die. I have struggled and still struggle with suicidal thoughts for most of my life. The idea of actually being gone from this world instead of temporarily non-existent, as I thought of blackout drinking, was terrifying. So I quit drinking, decided on a career, threw myself into it, and a few years later I left my country to pursue my dream. My life now is still stressful. I still struggle with my mental health and feelings of inadequacy due to starting over later in life in a country where I did not speak the language. Overall, though, I am much more fulfilled in this life than my previous one. The struggles I go through now are far more meaningful than the ones I made myself go through for a decade. Since I do not drink or do drugs anymore, I have been able to learn a new language in my 30s fairly quickly. It was a real shock to me because I thought I had ruined my brain forever. Story 46. I did this on May 25th. I broke up with my boyfriend. He is incredibly toxic and seems to have two personalities. I couldn't afford to move my things, so I put all my clothes in my car and drove 5 days to another state. I lost my job and do not have much in savings. The trauma he caused me over 7 years was too much to bear. I will see how things work out. Story 47. I had a pretty good life on paper. I had a 6-figure job, but it was all-consuming, 7 days a week, all hours of the day. I didn't have friendships or even romantic relationships outside of work and networking because there wasn't time. I found myself unable to think about anything other than work, and my employer continued to put more and more pressure on me to give more, offering large bonuses and raises. After a couple of years, I was mentally spiraling. Then one Sunday, I turned my phone off because I was getting panic attacks when it would ring. The next day, my employer berated me for not answering. I decided right then and there to quit my job. I quietly applied for graduate schools overseas, got accepted, and quit my job. They tried convincing me to stay, but I said no. I moved to the United Kingdom with 2 suitcases and sold everything. Years later, I have no regrets. I met my husband here. My life is much slower paced. I make a lot less money, but my mental health is great. Story 48. I left, and for the first time in decades, I felt peace and happiness. From there, I started working on myself. I cut ties with anyone who did not add value or positivity to my life. I found a life coach who completely shifted how I see myself. After some trial and error, I connected with an incredible therapist. I joined a support group. When I finally learned to see my own worth and truly love myself, I met a partner who reflects that love back to me. It was not a perfect path. There were still plenty of trials and errors, but I did it. I am still doing the work because I know it is lifelong, especially since I did not grow up with the tools to be my authentic self. But I am no longer in survival mode. I am living as the person I was meant to be, happy and free. It was terrifying to walk away from what was familiar and comfortable, even though it was toxic. But I did. Now, I look back and pat myself on the back for leaving, for growing, and for choosing me. I did it. Story 49. I remember telling an acquaintance why I was not coming back to the country of my origin when he wanted to go on a date with me. I told him that at 23, my parents decided for me where I was supposed to stay and what to do. I remember feeling dread inside my body, realizing this was going to be an either them or me situation. Now I am in my own apartment, have many friends and colleagues, and am finally starting to heal, break free, and accept that I am allowed to decide for myself where I am going to live and exist. Story 50. Getting judged and talked about for having postpartum depression. I had to send my child away for a little while to get myself together. It hurt to hear the rumor mill saying that I gave my child up, but that is not what happened. I did what was best for them and me at that time. A month and a half later, my child was back home with me. Now I am feeling better than ever, and my child wakes up smiling every day and gives me the biggest, tightest hug around my neck every morning. I am blessed to have had that time to get myself together. I am better for it. Story 51. I was crying while making the bed, wondering what I was doing wrong. That's when I needed to leave before my ex ended up hurting me just because he felt like it. I only took what I could carry in my purse and moved back in with my parents. I'm finally at a point where I own things of my own again. I do miss my beautiful corsets, though. Story 52. I did not walk away but was imprisoned falsely for 6 months and lost everything, including my retirement funds. I got very lucky and was able to start my old business again. In about 2 years, I am hopefully retired again. There is a lot of luck involved in life. Story 53. Decided to fully move out of the United States about 5 months ago. I am 27. Not just due to politics, I dislike both major parties, but because of the overall vibe of the United States being all about work and life balance, with zero culture, dirty cities, men and women resenting each other, and success being 99% based on how wealthy you grew up and the head start your family gives you. I became fascinated with how the rest of the world does not care about these things when I took my first international trip a few years ago. I spent a long time saving and planning to move internationally with my golden retriever. We are currently in Argentina, slowly traveling throughout South America. Overall, life is amazing and much slower. It was a huge culture shock to see how much everyone loves each other. No one talks about work. Genuinely, everyone respects each other. And it is still hard to get used to. The next step is deleting Reddit and all social media, but I am very thankful and never want to return to a country like the United States. Story 54. Years of issues being called stupid, him screaming at my parents and laughing at them when they did not have jobs, staying out every night until 11 p.m. at the pub, just a lot of gaslighting. The final straw came when he said I was getting in the way of his house renovations. The house had been an unfinished building site for 2 years before even being there. I packed up all my things into my Honda Civic, put his key under the mat, and sent a text. I stayed with my parents for a while, then moved on to a friend's place. I did not really have much, as years before he had convinced me to sell all my furniture because he did not have space for it. Those things are easy enough to start again with. It is only stuff. Story 55. Walking away and removing myself from my toxic family is the best gift I have ever given myself. No regrets. I am thriving mentally and emotionally, and my physical health has improved immensely. Letting go of all my things, and those people did amazing things for me. I am really grateful to myself for making that decision. I started over with only what fit in my car and moved across the country to a state where nobody who knew me would be able to guess. Not that they would go looking anyway. Sometimes I am a little lonely, but not lonely enough to undo anything. Story 56. I left my abusive family when I was 16, cut all contact, and now I run my own business and live in a different state from them. Story 57. I was exposed to asbestos and had an employment agency stalking me over the years, including during kid pickup runs. They would randomly turn up at new employers for a chat. I would lose the job afterward, but never received a reason why. I tried disappearing, moving interstate, and changing career paths. Eventually, they found me again. I lost my job of 4.5 years just before the COVID-19 pandemic. I couldn't find another job because it was a niche role, and I lived 2 hours from the central business district where 90% of this work was located. I couldn't find work and applied for unemployment assistance, but they kept denying help and financial assistance. Eventually, I lapsed into severe depression, locked myself in the garage, and slept on the couch. Eventually, my marriage failed, and I lost the house, kids, cat, and nearly everything I had. After 8 years, I finally got some assistance once I was divorced and without any support. Some of my friends were going through difficult times during and after the COVID-19 pandemic and showed signs of their own struggles, but I was too blindsided by the divorce to see this. I spent a year living in a tent in outback Queensland, as the assistance was less than half of what was needed to live in Australia. I managed to land a job back in the same city with my kids. I now work very hard, having lost nearly 30 kilograms in the new job. I have a single room and get to see my kids once a week, but ageism is gradually making things difficult. I still think of leaving again and letting my kids go. Story 58. I stayed in Tennessee to help my family. My mother died from coronavirus disease, and my father experienced long-term side effects and needed help with bills and legal matters. I organized my mother's funeral and went through 20 years' worth of paperwork. I only stayed in Tennessee to help my family, I was diagnosed with cancer and had to use my savings for treatment, eventually staying at my father's house for 6 months. This was the first time I stayed rent-free at his house since I was 17. After about 3 months, my father told me that I was a failure, that I had years to buy a house, and that he was disappointed I was relying on him. This was hard to hear, especially since I had just had surgery and was waiting for results to determine if I needed radiation therapy. I felt foolish because I had spent all my time taking care of my family. I cried for 2 days, composed myself, and made a plan. I got a second job while recovering at Amazon, secured down payment assistance, and moved to a different state. My father was upset that I was leaving and no longer available to help. My life is amazing now. I got married, use cannabis whenever I want, and my cancer is currently in remission. I am no longer the caretaker for everyone. They still ask me to help with paperwork and legal matters, but I tell them I gave them the documents and they need to handle it themselves. Story 59. Can't say that I walked away from everything. Sometimes I was tossed. I guess 4 or 5 times. Drugs, people, sometimes my own sheer stupidity. I am doing good, though I am starting to think being able to walk away so easily may be part of the problem. Story 60. I had a really toxic friend group, always involved with legal troubles. One day, one of them got into a serious problem that could have eventually caused trouble for me as well. I thought, forget this, and I cut them all off. They tried to contact me, but I told them I got married when I did not. Story 61. I tried to kill myself and would have succeeded if the cord had not fallen or snapped off. I know my significant other was in the other room and did not care. They sent me to jail and took my freedom, so cheating could happen more than 5 times. They still do not care about anything done to me. How I feel is irrelevant. My pain is invisible to my significant other. I left with a bag. Story 62. Student loan, and not a single woman would take me seriously. A girl actually said, "Call me when you pay off your loan." Okay. I left my country and everything, started a new life, and I am doing much better. I barely want to end my life anymore. Money can buy happiness. Story 63. My ex bankrupted us with her business, got us into $60,000 debt with lenders, $30,000 debt to my mom, emptied out my retirement savings, and then she decided she was polyamorous and I was holding her back from happiness because it was just hooking up with her coworker. All of that happened in about 6 weeks. My family encouraged me to get a divorce and see a therapist. I left behind city life, marriage, and started traveling. The thought of buying a couch made me want to puke. I spent 3 months in the Dominican Republic, learned basic Spanish, learned kite surfing, and made a ton of friends. It was shockingly cheap and easy to do. Then I flew to North Carolina and purchased a motorcycle to do the trip of a lifetime, the Trans-America Trail, which is basically 2 months of camping and dirt roads. I am on week 2 of 8 of the trip. This morning I woke up, watched the sunrise over a lake in Kansas from my tent, made coffee, and then took a nap. Being stripped of my identity, like my old fancy neighborhood, my job, and my marriage, felt like a crab molting. Now I am confident and happy with nothing. A funny thing about the Dominican Republic, only the Americans there asked about my job. Everyone else asked if I liked dancing, rum, and how long I was going to be there. American culture does not foster happy people. Even the rich are unhappy. Endless ambition is not a healthy thing. The only one keeping you from reinventing or reprogramming yourself is you. No one cares or notices what you do with your life, so live like it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.